Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to start doing something a little bit different. We're going to be cooking outdoors on a campfire. So we need to understand that food doesn't have to just be cooked inside in a kitchen, and that kitchens can exist anywhere we want to create them. So today we're going to have a go at creating campfire popcorn and making some lovely campfire bread to go with our seasonal soup that we made earlier. As always, as we're outside, as the same as indoors, we need to make sure that we are hygienic and we are cooking our food in the right way. So we need to make sure that we're washing our hands, removing any jewellery, tying back hair, and making sure that we've got no loose articles of clothing that could get either into the fire or into the food. So the first thing we're going to make today is popcorn. Okay, so to make our popcorn, we're going to need a bowl. We're going to need some popcorn kernels, and you can get these from any supermarket or health shop, and they're really cheap to buy. We need some oil, and you can use sunflower oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, whatever you've got in the house, a spoon, and we also need to make one of these, which is going to be our popcorn maker. So all I've done is I've got two sieves, put one on top of the other, and then I've tied some metal wire around a piece of wood. So this is a piece of bamboo, but you can use a broom handle or any stick, so long as it's nice and dry. Make sure your wire isn't plastic coated, because remember, this is going to get hot. And then I've also tied the sieves together at the neck there as well. So what we can do is we can lift the top up to put our popcorn kernels in when we're ready, but we can also get them out really easily. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get a handful of kernels and we're going to put them into our bowl. We don't want too many because we want them to make sure that they've got enough space inside our sieves to move and pop around. And then we're just going to add a little dash of oil, not too much. And then we're going to give that a little mix round to make sure they're all fully coated. And that's going to stop them from burning, and that's going to ensure that we get some nice white popcorn once it's popped. And that's all ready to go into our sieves. Okay, so let's put it into our sieves now. So we're just going to open up the top and then we'll just pour it in. You might need to scoop it out with your hand if it sticks in there. There you go. And then just close it down. So you can see that I've not got too much in there, but that will allow lots of space for it to pop. And because I've got the one on the top, it's not going to escape either. Now you can also make popcorn in your kitchen if you don't want to do it outside. And it's exactly the same method, only use a pan. Make sure that you put the oil in the pan first, heat it so it's really hot. So when you drop the kernels in, they'll sizzle, and then keep the lid on so that when they pop, they don't all escape everywhere. Okay, so here we are at the campfire. So you can see that most of the flames have now gone, and we've got the really hot embers at the bottom of the fire. Now that's still going to be really hot, so we don't want to get too close to our fire at this point. You can see that I've put it in a bowl off the ground, because we're surrounded by quite a lot of dead leaves and wood here, and we wouldn't want the fire to get out of control and out of hand. And I've also got my bucket of water on hand to be able to put my fire out when I've finished cooking. So first of all, we're going to cook our popcorn that we've made. So remember, we've put it into our sieves and we've got a nice long handle. So if you've got younger children, you don't want to be this close to the fire, they can sit quite a way away depending on how long your piece of wood is that you've put on your sieves. And then I've also got a bowl ready to put all my popcorn in once it's cooked. So we're just going to hold it over the fire. It will take a few minutes for it to heat up. And as we're waiting for it to heat up, keep giving it a little shake and a stir around to make sure that those kernels are moving inside the sieve. And then we're just going to wait for the oil to start burning, and then the heat of the fire combined with the heat of the oil will then make those kernels pop, and we should see some nice white popcorn in our sieves in a minute. So the good thing about making popcorn on a campfire is that it's going to give it a natural flavour. So we don't actually need to add anything extra to our popcorn because it's going to have a nice smoky flavour to it. If you want to, you can add a little bit of salt maybe a little bit of sugar depending on what you've eaten in that day. But if you really want it to be teeth healthy, then you can add something like nutmeg or cinnamon or ginger to it. Just a little sprinkling, mix it around in your bowl, and then that will give it a totally different flavour. Or you can have a mix of flavours, just get experimenting. Okay, so you can start to see it popping away in there. That's why we've got the one on the top, to make sure that it doesn't fly out. We want to make sure we don't burn any of the popcorn that's already popped. So when it starts popping, make sure you keep swirling it around, giving it a little shake. It'll be slow to start with, don't worry, and then it will all start to pop at once. There we go. So that's why you don't want too much in your sieves at any one time, because you want to make sure that you can heat it all evenly so you don't start then burning the popped popcorn. You want to keep it nice and fluffy and not burnt. We're going to leave that to pop itself away. It's really important that once it's finished popping, you remove it from the heat and then you allow the sieves to cool. So the sieves are metal, they will be hot to start with. We need to allow those to cool down before we empty them. But because it is only thin metal, they won't take too long to cool down. So you won't have to wait too long until you can start eating your nice healthy snack. And the good thing about this is you can also use old sieves that you've got lying around that you might be thinking about throwing away. Don't feel like you've got to go out and buy some brand new ones. So just use what you've already got, or get some nice cheap ones. Don't have to be expensive. Okay, so our popcorn's coming along really nicely there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove it from the heat while I check the bottom to make sure it's all popped, give it a final shake, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that off the heat and leave it to cool down. So I'm really fortunate that I've got this brick circle here, so I can leave it on there. That's not going to hurt my popcorn and it's not going to hurt the ground. What we wouldn't want to do is put it on this dry ground here, because we wouldn't want that heat to transfer into the leaves. The other good thing is, while it is cooling down, any last minute popping can still take place. It's not going to pop off anywhere else. So I'm just going to check the top and the sides. They're nice and cool. So all I'm going to do is prise it open and let all that popcorn fall out into my bowl. So that's a nice healthy snack ready for you to eat. Okay, so now that we've finished making our popcorn, which is a lovely healthy snack for us to have in between meals, let's make our bread, which is going to go with our winter seasonal soup. So we can use that to dip into the soup, or we can add some butter to it and have it on its own. Okay, so let's get on and make our bread now. It's really important that we make sure we have all of our equipment inside ready. And it's even more important when we're outside, because we don't want to be dashing in and out of the house or wherever we're living or cooking from to get equipment. So make sure you've got everything first. So for our bread, we're going to need a bowl, a wooden spoon to mix with, a nice clean area to be able to knead your bread on, so whether that's a chopping board or a nice clean table, a measuring cup. Now, you can use any cup. It doesn't have to specifically be a measuring cup. Just so long as you use the same cup for all of your measurements, then that way it'll all be equal. And then the ingredients we're going to use today is we're going to use some self-raising flour, some salt and some water. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 cups of self-raising flour into our bowl. Make sure they're nice and level. There we go. And then we're going to add a pinch of salt. And then we're just going to give that a little mix, make sure the salt's all in there. And then we're going to use 1 cup of water. So I'm going to measure that out, but I'm not going to add it all at the same time. I'm going to add it a little bit at a time, and then I'm going to mix it. Now, eventually you are going to need to get your hands dirty with this one, I'm afraid, but that's part of the fun, and I'm sure that your children will love to do that. So I'll add some more in. And the idea is that we're going to make a dough that's nice and shiny and soft and a little bit stretchy so that we can mould it ready to be cooked on our campfire. So I'm just going to add most of the water now. And what we want to do is we want to make sure we've added as much of the water as possible in the bowl before we put it onto our mat for kneading. So that's all the water in there now. And this is where we're going to need to get messy. So we're going to need to take all that off the spoon. Now, if you find your dough is too wet, you can add a little bit more flour. And if it's too dry and it's not sticking together or it's not very elastic, then just add a tiny touch more water. So we're just going to try and combine that into a ball before then we properly knead it onto our board. So this is a really simple bread. It's really cheap to make. This will probably make around 4 pieces, depending on how big you want your pieces to be. And if you want to make more, then you can just double up on your ingredients. And if you want to make less, then just half them. So we've added that all together. So we can see that's starting to stick. We'll know because we'll have less pieces on the board and on our hands, and it will all be together. And we can start to see that there's elasticity in there. So it's nice and stretchy. It's not too soft that it's sticking to everything, but it's not too dry that it won't stick together either. So just have a play about with it. You can't really go wrong. Like I say, if you need to add a little bit of water or flour, then do so. So that is our dough. So what we're going to do is going to break a bit off and we're going to roll it into balls. Now this is going to be easier for us to be able to manage in smaller sections. So they're going to be about golf ball size. You can make them slightly bigger if you wish. There we go. You can keep these, so you can keep them for around about 24 hours, cover them in cling film. They should be fine. There we go. So we've got our little balls of dough. So what we're going to do is just get rid of some of those, and then we're just going to work on one. So what we need to do is just squish it out into a sausage shape and just roll it. You can do it in your hands or on the board, whichever you feel is easier. And then what we're going to do is going to wrap it around a stick for cooking. Now we can't just cook on any kind of stick because the bread is going to be quite close to the embers. It's going to be quite hot. What we need to do is make sure that we're using a piece of green wood. So the best kind of wood to use is something like elder, and we can identify elder from the little spots that are on the bark, and also when we cut it you'll see that you've got a little section in the middle as well as the outer. So we don't want the whole branch, so we're going to get rid of that end. We don't need all of those bits. So we've got a nice long stick there to be able to cook with. We want the fatter end because we're going to wrap the bread around it. So we're going to peel it. Now you can either do it just with your fingernails and just peel it off. It comes off really simply. Or you can use a potato peeler. So if you've got an old potato peeler you're about to throw away, you can use that. Or you can use a knife to just scrape it off. So any kind of knife, it doesn't have to be particularly sharp. And then all of that bark will just come off and you can see the green edge inside, and that's what we're going to cook on. So that'll be nice and clean for your bread to be able to go around, and it's also nice and damp, so it's not going to set fire, which will enable the inside of your bread to cook. Okay, so now that we've stripped all the outer bark from the top end of our stick, we can wrap our bread around it. So we're just going to start from the bottom, and then we're just going to wrap it in a spiral until we get to the top. Now, obviously, the more air gaps you get in it, the more of a spiral shape you'll get, and the closer together, the more of a tube you'll get. And that will depend on what you're going to use your bread for. So if you're going to use it for dipping, then it doesn't really matter into your soup. If you're going to use it to fill the center with something else, then you probably want it a bit closer together. And then we're just giving it a pat down so it's nice and tight on there, so it's not going to fall off when we hold it over our fire. So that's all ready to cook. So when we cook that, we're going to hold it just above the fire, so about that distance, so about 30 centimetres. If you're going to leave it, because it's going to take around 15 to 20 minutes to cook, then you could create a prop for it to stand up so you're not having to hold it. Or if you just enjoy being around the campfire and spending time together, then you can just hold it in place. So let's go and cook some bread. Okay, so we can see our fire is still nice and hot because we can see all those glowing embers right at the bottom, and that's perfect to be able to cook our bread on. So I've got my bread that we did earlier on our peeled stick. Remember, it needs to be green wood. Elder is brilliant for that, but if you don't have access to elder, anything that's not going to burn, so nice and green inside, and we're just going to hover that over the fire. Now what we're going to do, that's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook, and every 5 minutes we need to keep turning it over so that we're baking it nice and evenly. And what you'll see is you'll see it start to puff out, you'll see it start to get darker, and hopefully you won't burn the outside and not cook the middle. So you want that nice even glow to it. Like I said before, if you've got a way of propping that up, so you could put another stick in the ground and prop it onto, or if you've got something that you can hold it down with. So here I could put my brick on top, and then I can leave that there cooking and just keep checking on it every 5 minutes and keep rolling it over to get that even cook. Okay, so as we're turning it round, we can start to see that's bubbling. It's starting to change colour, which is showing us it's starting to cook. So you can get those indications. And that's going to be another 5 minutes, and then that will be done. So what we'll do is remove that from the heat when it's finally finished, and then we'll just allow it to cool on the stick, and then we'll remove it off the stick once it's cool enough to be able to handle. And then you can eat it as you like. But we are making our seasonal winter soup, so that it'll be really lovely to put with that and to be able to dip into that soup base that we're going to make as well. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you've enjoyed cooking outside and as something a little bit different than cooking in your kitchen. Remember, this can be done at any time of the year. It doesn't have to just be in the autumn or in the summer or spring. You can even do it in the winter when it's cold and you want a little bit of a warming activity to do outside.